I was standing in the doorway of our bedroom when Landon said it. Just standing there, holding a basket of laundry, completely unprepared for what was about to come out of his mouth. "She's already on her way here," he said casually, not even looking up from his phone. "I told Brooke she could stay with us." I said yes. The room tilted slightly. Everything went fuzzy at the edges for just a second. My fiancé didn't look at me when he spoke those words. He was focused entirely on his phone screen, casually sealing a decision that felt like it was detonating something inside my chest. His ex-girlfriend. Moving into our apartment. Not asking my permission. Not discussing it with me first. Simply informing me after the fact. Like my consent was just a courtesy he had already decided to skip. I felt heat crawl slowly up my neck. My fingers curled tighter around the doorframe until my knuckles started burning white. My breath caught somewhere in my throat. And the absolute worst part of this entire moment. He smiled. Actually smiled. Relieved. Like I had just proven something important to him by standing there silently. Like my lack of immediate protest meant I was okay with this insane situation. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the laundry basket at his head. I just nodded once. I heard my own voice say something that sounded calm and reasonable. "Okay." The word came out steady. Cooperative. Almost kind, even though everything inside me was screaming something completely different. Inside my chest, something cracked so sharply it felt physical. Like an actual bone breaking. My heart slammed once against my ribs, hard. Like it was testing whether it should even keep going at all. Landon exhaled with obvious relief. He actually thanked me. He walked over and kissed my cheek quickly, already moving on to the next thing, already confident that I wouldn't make this situation difficult or dramatic. His lips touched my skin and I tasted blood. I had bitten down on my tongue without even realizing it. "You're the best," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "This is exactly why I love you. You're so understanding about everything." He walked past me into the hallway, already texting someone. Probably Brooke. Probably telling her how smoothly this conversation had gone. How reasonable I had been about the whole thing. That's when I realized something crucial. Something that changed everything about what would happen next. He thought this conversation was over. He thought this decision was final and settled. He believed I had accepted it completely just because I hadn't immediately exploded with anger. He had no idea what was actually happening inside my head. This was the precise moment my relationship stopped feeling like it belonged to me. The moment my home became something I would have to share without my permission or input. The moment I finally understood exactly how replaceable Landon thought I was. How little my feelings actually mattered to him when they conflicted with what he wanted. He had made a decision that affected both of us, that changed our entire living situation, without even pretending to care about my opinion. He had invited his ex-girlfriend to move into the apartment I paid half the rent on. And he had done it all without asking me first because he knew I would say no. So he simply didn't give me the chance to refuse. He just made the choice and then informed me afterward when it was already too late to stop it. Standing there in that doorway, holding laundry that suddenly felt impossibly heavy, I understood something with perfect clarity. This wasn't about Brooke needing a place to stay temporarily. This wasn't about Landon being a good friend to someone from his past. This was about testing me. About seeing exactly how much I would accept. About pushing boundaries to find out where my limits actually were. And I made a decision right then that would determine everything that came after. I would let him keep believing that I had no limits. That I would accept anything. Right up until the moment I walked away completely. My name is Whitney Caldwell. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a project manager for a software company downtown. I believe deeply in partnership. In communication. In choosing someone actively every single day instead of just letting a relationship happen by default. I had built my life very carefully over the years. Career I was proud of. Savings I had accumulated through discipline. Daily routines that made me feel grounded. Plans for a future I thought I was creating with someone, not just beside them. I thought I was building something real with Landon. Something based on mutual respect and consideration for each other's feelings. I thought he saw me as an equal partner whose opinions mattered as much as his own. I was completely wrong about all of that. And that realization, standing in that doorway listening to him make plans that affected my entire life without including me in the decision, changed how I would move forward from this moment. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't try to convince him that what he was doing was wrong or hurtful. I would simply plan. Quietly. Carefully. Methodically. Because I had learned something important in my career that applied perfectly to this situation. When someone shows you they don't respect you, arguing about it rarely changes their mind. They just get better at hiding their disrespect. The only real solution was to stop expecting respect from someone who had already shown they wouldn't give it. Landon used to praise me constantly for being what he called secure. He loved telling people how I didn't get jealous or possessive. How I was easy compared to other women he had dated. How his ex-girlfriends had been dramatic about everything, but I was different. Better. More mature. I had absorbed all of that like it was the highest compliment possible. I had felt proud of being the cool girlfriend who didn't make things difficult, who didn't create problems or drama. I never questioned who actually benefited most from my flexibility. From my willingness to accommodate whatever he wanted without pushing back. Looking back now with clear eyes, I could see it so obviously. I wasn't secure in our relationship. I wasn't confident and mature. I was just accommodating. I was bending constantly to fit whatever shape he needed me to be. I was swallowing my own discomfort and calling it understanding. And my constant accommodation had taught him something dangerous. It had taught him that he could take more and more without consequence. That I would adjust and accept whatever he decided. That my boundaries were negotiable. That my feelings were optional considerations rather than important factors in our shared decisions. Being easy had made it easy for him to ignore what I needed. To prioritize what he wanted. To make choices that affected both of us without bothering to include me. I had trained him to disrespect me by never showing him there would be consequences for doing so. That was about to change. Brooke arrived the next afternoon with 3 large suitcases and a laugh that immediately landed too comfortably in my living room. Like she had been there 1,000 times before. Like she belonged. She didn't hesitate at all when she hugged Landon. Her arms went around him naturally, familiarly. Her hand lingered on his shoulder when she pulled back. He didn't step away or create distance. They stood close, talking and laughing, while I watched from the kitchen doorway with a smile I didn't feel anywhere inside my body. "Thank you so much for letting me crash here," Brooke said, finally turning to acknowledge my presence. But she was talking to Landon. Thanking him. Not me. Not us. Just him. Like this was his apartment. His decision. His generosity. Like I was just part of the furniture that happened to be here. Landon didn't correct her. Didn't say we're happy to help, or include me in any way. He just smiled and told her it was no problem, she could stay as long as she needed. I stood there silently, watching this interaction, cataloging every small detail. The way she touched him. The way he allowed it. The way neither of them seemed to remember I existed until they needed something from the kitchen. Brooke walked through my apartment like she was returning home after a long trip, not visiting someone else's space. She knew where everything was. She moved with confidence and familiarity. And I realized with cold certainty that this wasn't the first time she had been here. That first night they sat together on the couch while I made dinner. I could hear them talking and laughing from the kitchen. Their voices overlapped easily, finishing each other's sentences. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Shared memories from years I wasn't part of. A past that seemed to breathe between them like it had never actually ended. I brought them drinks and snacks. I smiled and nodded when they included me in the conversation occasionally. I swallowed the humiliation that came with every laugh they shared without me. At some point my wine glass became empty. I sat there holding it, waiting to see if anyone would notice. If anyone would offer to refill it or ask if I wanted more. No one did. They were too absorbed in their own conversation, their own connection, their own world that had no space for me in it. I stood up quietly and refilled my glass myself, came back to the living room and sat down in the chair across from them, separate. They didn't notice I had left. Didn't notice I had returned. I was furniture again. Background. Invisible. But I was paying attention now. Really paying attention. Watching everything with clear eyes instead of forcing myself to see what I wanted to see. Watching how they looked at each other. How comfortable they were in shared space. How easily they fell back into old patterns. And I started making mental notes of everything I observed. The next morning, I came into the kitchen to find Brooke rearranging my cabinets, moving my dishes to different shelves, reorganizing my spices into an order that made no sense to me. "I'm just trying to help make things more efficient," she explained brightly when she saw my expression. "This layout is so much better." I stood there silently, watching her restructure my kitchen without permission, changing my space to suit her preferences. When I mentioned it to Landon later, he sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Can you just be patient with her?" he asked. "She's going through a hard time. She's just trying to be helpful and feel useful. Be patient. Accommodate. Just, again." My space was shrinking by inches every day. Emotionally, physically, my routines had to adjust around theirs. Their conversations, their shared meals, their movie nights on my couch. I was the one compromising constantly, making room, being flexible, being understanding. And no one thanked me anymore. No one even seemed to notice. Landon used to thank me when I was accommodating. Used to acknowledge when I was being flexible about his needs. But now it was just expected, assumed. My willingness to bend had become invisible. I cooked dinner and they ate it while talking to each other. I cleaned up while they watched shows together. I adjusted my schedule around their plans without anyone asking if I minded. My apartment no longer felt like mine. 3 days after Brooke moved in, I walked past the guest room on my way to bed. The door was closed, but I could hear laughter behind it. Low voices, intimate, familiar. The kind of laughter that comes from being completely comfortable with another person. I stood outside that closed door for a long moment listening. My heart beating steadily in my chest. My face calm. My hands loose at my sides. Nothing explicit was happening. Nothing I could point to and say definitively crossed a line. Nothing deniable if I tried to bring it up. That's exactly what made it worse somehow. The emotional intimacy that didn't need to hide because it could always be explained away as just friendship. Just comfort. Just two people with history being there for each other. Emotional cheating doesn't need a locked door. It doesn't need physical evidence. It just needs space that deliberately excludes the actual partner. And that's exactly what was happening behind that guest room door. Space where I didn't exist. Connection that had nothing to do with me. I walked to my own bedroom, mine and Landon's, and lay down in the dark. He came to bed an hour later, smelling like Brooke's perfume. He kissed my forehead and fell asleep immediately, completely relaxed. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise, my mind perfectly clear and focused, making plans, thinking through options, preparing for what came next. I stopped reacting after that night. Stopped showing any visible emotion about Brooke being here or how much space she was taking up in my home and relationship. Instead, I started documenting everything, quietly, mentally, building a clear picture of exactly what was happening. Who defended whom when any small conflict arose? Who checked whose reactions first before saying something? How often my name got left out of conversations about plans for my own apartment? I noticed that Landon asked Brooke's opinion about what to watch, what to eat, what to do on weekends. But he stopped asking me. He just assumed I would go along with whatever they decided. I noticed that Brooke had opinions about everything in my space. About how I organized things. About what I bought at the grocery store. About my routines and habits. And Landon never told her those opinions weren't welcome. I noticed that they texted constantly even when they were both home. Sitting in the same room but messaging each other instead of speaking out loud. Sharing private jokes. Private conversations. creating intimacy that deliberately excluded me. Patterns don't lie when you actually pay attention to them. Numbers and behaviors tell the truth that words try to hide. And the pattern here was crystal clear. I was being replaced slowly, right in front of my own eyes in my own home. They were acting like a couple. I was acting like a roommate they tolerated. 2 weeks after Brooke moved in, I finally spoke up. I waited until we were alone and asked Landon calmly if we could talk about the living situation. He sighed before I even finished my sentence. "You're overthinking this," he said gently, patiently, like he was correcting a confused child. Like my discomfort was something unreasonable that he was being generous enough to tolerate. "I just think we need some boundaries," I tried again. "Boundaries?" He laughed a little. "She's going through a breakup, Whitney. She needs support. I thought you were more mature than this." Mature. That word again. The one he used when he wanted me to accept something I didn't want to accept. The word that meant, "Don't make this difficult for me." "I'm not being immature," I said quietly. "I'm trying to tell you how I feel. And I'm trying to tell you that you're creating problems where there aren't any," he replied. "Brooke is my friend. She needs help. That's all this is. If you can't handle me having female friends, that's something you need to work on." He turned it around on me. Made it about my insecurity instead of his choices. Made me the problem that needed fixing. I stopped sharing my feelings after that conversation. Stopped trying to make him understand. Stopped hoping he would suddenly start prioritizing my comfort. Because I finally understood that he didn't want to understand. He wanted me quiet and compliant. That's when I stopped speaking up entirely. I opened a new savings account at a different bank the next day. One that Landon didn't know about. One that wouldn't show up on any statements he might see. I started rerouting part of my paycheck deposits to this new account. Not all of it that would be noticeable. Just enough to build up resources without raising questions. I gathered important documents. My birth certificate, my passport, tax records, anything I would need if I had to leave suddenly. I put them all in a folder and stored it at my office. I checked my credit score and reviewed all my accounts. Made sure nothing was joint that didn't need to be. Started separating my financial life from his methodically. I didn't announce any of this. Didn't threaten. Didn't warn him that I was preparing to leave. I just quietly built an exit strategy while smiling and nodding at dinner. While being patient with Brooke, rearranging my space. While accommodating their movie nights and inside jokes. I planned in silence. Researched apartments available for rent. Calculated what I could afford on my own. Started imagining what my life would look like without him in it. And I discovered something surprising. When I pictured my life alone, I didn't feel scared or sad. Felt relieved. Lighter. Like I could finally breathe properly again. Silence had become my most effective weapon. And I was learning to use it strategically. By the third week, Brooke had stopped asking permission for anything. She had moved from guest to resident without anyone making that official decision. She started acting comfortable in ways that crossed obvious lines. Borrowing my clothes without asking. Using my expensive face products. Eating food I had specifically bought for myself. Making comments about when I used to live with Landon, like those memories were recent instead of years old. Speaking in future tense about plans that included her. When we redecorate and next time we go there and we should get one of those. Her and Landon. Not including me. She acted like I was temporary and she was permanent. Like I was the one visiting someone else's space instead of living in my own apartment that I paid for. Landon didn't correct her. Didn't remind her this was my home too. Didn't create any boundaries or expectations around her behavior. He just let her act like she belonged here more than I did. I watched all of this happen with a calm, detached observation. Making notes. Documenting patterns. Waiting. Because confidence makes people careless. When people think they've already won, they stop being careful about what they say and do. And careless people reveal truths they meant to keep hidden. It happened over breakfast one morning. Landon had already left for work. Brooke and I were sitting at the kitchen table together, which was unusual. She was usually still asleep when I left. She was talking about something casual when she mentioned a plan Landon had for next month. Something specific about a work event. "Wait," I said, keeping my voice light and curious. "What event?" She looked confused. "The conference in Austin. Landon didn't tell you he was going." He hadn't told me. Hadn't mentioned it once. But apparently he had discussed it in detail with Brooke. "Oh right," I said, smiling. "Thanks for reminding me. I forgot the dates." She kept talking, mentioning other details. Where he was staying. Who he was meeting. Plans he had made around the conference. Information he had shared with her but kept from me. I smiled and nodded. Thanked her for clearing that up. Acted like it was no big deal. She didn't realize what she had just done. Didn't understand that she had confirmed exactly what I suspected. That Landon was sharing his life with her, not me. That I was the outsider now. But I knew. I finally had clear, undeniable confirmation. Landon was planning a future that didn't include me. He was just waiting for the right moment to make that official. And I was going to make sure I left before he got that chance. Late that same night, I woke up to voices. Raised voices. Coming from the living room. I lay still in bed, listening through the bedroom door that Landon had left slightly open when he got up. They were arguing. Not about me exactly. But about timing. About logistics. About feeling pressured and overwhelmed. "I told you this would take time," Landon said, his voice stressed. "You can't just push me." "I've been patient," Brooke replied. "But I need to know what's actually happening. I need some kind of timeline." "Soon," Landon promised. "Just let me handle this the right way." "Handle what?" "Handle me. Handle ending our relationship. Handle transitioning from me to her." I stared at the ceiling in the dark, my heart beating steadily. No panic. No fear. Just clarity. I had never been part of their actual equation. I was just an obstacle they were working around. A problem Landon needed to handle carefully. They weren't talking about if he would leave me for her. They were talking about when and how. The only question was whether I would still be here when Landon finally got around to handling me the right way. I had already decided the answer to that question. I just needed to execute my plan. The next morning, Landon acted like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't heard him making promises to another woman in the middle of the night. He made coffee and kissed my cheek. Told me things would go back to normal soon. That word that promised everything and meant nothing. He never defined what soon meant. Never gave me an actual timeline. Never explained what normal would look like or how long I was expected to wait for it. Soon. Vague and meaningless. Designed to keep me patient and compliant while he did whatever he actually planned to do. I nodded and smiled. Said I understood. Said I knew this was temporary. But I already knew what normal meant to him. Normal meant him and Brooke together. Normal meant me gone. Normal meant not having to hide or manage two relationships at once. He was asking me to be patient while he replaced me. To wait quietly while he figured out the smoothest way to transition from one girlfriend to the next without any uncomfortable gaps or scenes. I had been patient enough. Accommodating enough. Understanding enough. I was done waiting for Landon to decide what happened to my life. From this moment forward, I was making my own decisions. Creating my own timeline. Defining my own version of soon. And soon meant a lot sooner than he expected. I signed the lease on a new apartment that weekend. A one-bedroom place across town. Small but perfect. Affordable on just my salary. Available immediately. I paid the deposit and first month's rent from my secret savings account. Scheduled the move-in date for 2 weeks away. Gave my notice at our current building that I wouldn't be renewing the lease that was coming up. I started packing my personal things quietly. One drawer at a time. One box at a time. Things Landon wouldn't notice were gone until it was too late. My clothes, my books, my photos and personal items. Everything that was truly mine. I left all the shared items completely untouched. The dishes we had bought together. The furniture. The decorations. Everything that could be argued over or claimed by both of us. I didn't want any of it. Didn't need any of it. I just wanted to leave cleanly without owing him anything or giving him any excuse to contact me later. I stored the packed boxes in my office. Kept my plans completely private. Told no one, not even my closest friends. This was my secret. My strategy. I didn't take anything I didn't fully own. Didn't steal or hide anything of his. I just quietly prepared to remove myself completely from a situation that no longer served me. Revenge wasn't about taking things. It was about walking away with dignity and tact. As I packed and planned in secret, Brooke's behavior grew even bolder. She assumed she had already won whatever competition she thought we were in. She started correcting me in small ways. About how I cooked. About how I organized things. About my routines and choices. Like she had authority over my life and space. She began replacing me in subtle ways. Cooking Landon's favorite meals. Watching his favorite shows. Being the one he talked to first when he came home from work. She acted like permanence was guaranteed. Like it was only a matter of time before I figured out I didn't belong here anymore and left on my own. I let her think that. Let her grow comfortable in her assumed victory. Let her believe she was successfully pushing me out. Because arrogance speeds mistakes. Overconfidence makes people careless about covering their tracks. When people think they've already won, they stop being strategic. Brooke stopped being careful about what she said around me. Stopped pretending this was temporary. Stopped acting like a grateful guest. And every careless word, every entitled action, every boundary she crossed just confirmed that I was making the right decision. She thought she was winning. She had no idea I had already decided not to play. Friends started noticing something was wrong. They asked questions when they visited. Made comments about how strange it was that Landon's ex was living with us. How long is she staying? They would ask, looking uncomfortable. Just until she finds a place, I would reply calmly. She's going through a hard time. But their questions made Landon defensive, irritable, uncertain. He started snapping at people who suggested this arrangement was weird. Getting angry when anyone implied something inappropriate was happening. Why does everyone have to make this complicated? He would complain. I'm just helping a friend. Why can't anyone understand that? I watched his stress level increase as more people questioned his choices. As his carefully controlled situation started attracting attention and judgment he hadn't anticipated. Control was slipping away from him. The narrative he wanted to maintain, good guy helping ex-girlfriend, mature and enlightened relationship, was being questioned by everyone around him. And he didn't handle the scrutiny well. He got defensive and angry instead of confident and clear. People who have nothing to hide don't act like that. They don't get hostile when asked simple questions. They don't snap at friends for expressing concern. His behavior told everyone the truth his words tried to deny. And I watched it all unfold with quiet satisfaction. 2 days before my move-in date at the new apartment, I told Landon I was leaving. Clearly, with complete finality. He was sitting on the couch watching TV. I stood in front of him and said the words I had been planning for weeks. I'm moving out this weekend. I've already signed a lease on a new place. This is over. His face drained of all color. The remote fell from his hand. What are you talking about? He asked. His voice suddenly high and strained. You're leaving. Just like that. Not just like that, I corrected. I've been planning this carefully. I'm just informing you now. The same way he had informed me about Brooke moving in. No discussion. No negotiation. Just information delivered as a fact. He stood up quickly, panic spreading across his face. Panic is very loud when you're not prepared for it. When you thought you were in control of the situation. You can't just leave, he said desperately. We need to talk about this. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, I replied calmly. You made your choices. I'm making mine. He tried to hug me. I stepped back. He tried to take my hand. Pulled away. "Whitney, please," he begged. "Don't do this." But I was already done. Already gone emotionally. This was just the physical part catching up to what I had decided weeks ago. The apologies poured out after that. Desperate. Frantic. Rewriting history to make himself look better. "I never meant for things to go this far," Landon insisted. "Brooke doesn't mean anything to me. It was just friendship. I swear." He promised everything would change if I stayed. Brooke would leave immediately. Things would go back to how they used to be. He would never disrespect me like this again. But I didn't argue with him. Didn't debate his version of events or try to prove what had really been happening. I just stayed quiet and kept packing the few remaining items I had left here. "Please," he begged, following me around. "Just tell me what I can do to fix this. I'll do anything." "You can't fix this," I said simply. "And I'm not interested in negotiating with disrespect." That's what this had been from the beginning. Disrespect dressed up as trust, as maturity, as me being secure and understanding. But real security doesn't mean accepting poor treatment. Real maturity means knowing when to walk away. He tried everything. Tears, anger, bargaining, promises. Nothing worked because I had already made my decision weeks ago. This wasn't an emotional reaction he could talk me out of. This was a strategic plan I had been executing methodically. And no amount of apologizing now could change what he had shown me about who he really was. While Landon was desperately trying to convince me to stay, Brooke apparently realized something important. Leaving with Landon meant instability, uncertainty, no ring, no engagement, no actual commitment. Just a man who had proven he would disrespect his partners and make decisions without considering their feelings. She had watched him treat me badly. She had helped him do it. And suddenly she understood that she would be next. If he would do this to me, he would do it to her. The cycle would just repeat. She packed her bags and left within days of my announcement. Found somewhere else to stay. Removed herself from the situation completely. Landon tried to stop her. Tried to convince her to stay. But she was done too. "This wasn't what I thought it would be," she told him on her way out. "I'm not doing this anymore." And just like that, Landon found himself completely alone. No fiance. No ex-girlfriend. No backup plan. No safety net. Both women had walked away within days of each other. He looked genuinely stunned. Like he couldn't understand how this had happened. How he had lost control so completely and quickly. He had thought he was managing everything perfectly. Playing both sides carefully. Keeping his options open. Instead he ended up with nothing. And he had no one to blame but himself. The apartment felt empty and cold after both of us left. No women remaining to manage his comfort. To cook his meals and organize his space and provide emotional support. Just Landon. Alone. In an apartment that suddenly felt much too big and quiet. He called me constantly those first few days. Dozens of calls. Hundreds of texts. Long voicemails where he pleaded for another chance. "I made a mistake. I see that now. I'll do anything to fix this. Please just talk to me." But I didn't respond to any of it. Didn't read the texts beyond the first line. Didn't listen to the voicemails all the way through. There was nothing he could say that would change my mind. Nothing he could promise that I would believe. He had shown me exactly who he was, and I had listened. He sent flowers to my office. They went straight into the trash. He showed up at my workplace. Security escorted him out. He tried to contact my friends and family. They all told him to leave me alone. Slowly, he seemed to understand that this was really final. That I wasn't coming back. That no amount of begging would change my decision. The calls and texts became less frequent, then stopped altogether. And I felt absolutely nothing when they stopped. No relief. No satisfaction. Just the absence of something that no longer mattered. I unpacked the last box in my new apartment on a bright Saturday morning. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The space was quiet and peaceful. Completely mine. My shoulders finally dropped from where they had been permanently tensed for months. I took a full, deep breath for the first time in weeks. The apartment was small but perfect. Every item here belonged to me. Every choice reflected my preferences. Every corner was organized the way I wanted it. No compromising. No accommodating. No adjusting myself to fit someone else's needs while mine got ignored. I made coffee exactly the way I liked it. Played music at whatever volume I wanted. Walked around in comfortable clothes without worrying about anyone else's opinion. Peace felt unfamiliar after so many months of tension and vigilance. But it felt absolutely right. I had worried that I would feel lonely or sad. That I would miss Landon despite everything. That leaving would feel like loss. Instead, it felt like freedom. Like waking up from a bad dream. Like finally putting down something heavy I had been carrying for too long. I sat on my couch in my quiet apartment and smiled. Really genuinely smiled. For the first time in months. This was what choosing myself looked like. And it felt better than I ever imagined it could. A week after moving in, I blocked Landon's number. Blocked him on every social media platform. Removed every digital connection between us. No closure speech. No dramatic goodbye message. No final confrontation where I told him everything I thought about what he had done. Just clean, permanent distance. Silence. Space. The end. He lost everything because he assumed I would accept less than I deserved. Because he thought I was too accommodating, too understanding, too mature to stand up for myself. He mistook my quietness for weakness. My patience for permission. My composure for compliance. And by the time he realized his mistake, I was already gone. Completely. Permanently. Unavailable. I walked away knowing exactly what I was worth. Knowing I deserved a partner who considered my feelings. Who valued my input. Who saw me as an equal instead of an option. I walked away with my dignity intact. With my savings protected. With my future secure. With my peace restored. Landon ended up in an empty apartment, alone, wondering how he lost everything so quickly. How both women had seen through him simultaneously and left. But I didn't wonder about him or his situation. Didn't check on him or ask mutual friends how he was doing. I simply moved forward with my life. Building something new. Creating space for something better. Choosing myself every single day. And I never looked back.